vacation place. So when we sold it, it eventually sold for the highest price ever sold for a place on that particular lake. So it turned out to be a good investment as well, but we didn't know that going in.
Yeah, that's one thing I'll say, Wayne. I've seen it happen. Even my father, when he was alive, they had a house. They originally bought it in the 50s. In fact, that was the first. That was the first house they actually bought. And I remember growing up in the house. They sold it. I think they bought it for $5,000. And then they sold it when I was in my mid-20s, and they got like $150,000. But you know what? My dad go, oh, look how much I made, $145,000. But then when he went, no, he didn't, because he didn't stop to realize when he went out to buy something else, that's where it hit him. Okay, that $145,000 was like a profit he made, was a down payment on where they moved in their on a lake, their retirement community. Hey, what can I say?
No, it's really true. I mean, it's we were in a position to. Lucky for us. I mean, we just happened to have our living area split up between California and South Dakota, so we had a place to go. But you're right, Gary. If you sell one place, then where are you going to live? If you make a bunch of money on the place you sell, unless you want to live in a tent, you got to buy another place, and then the prices you're dealing with today's prices, just like the price when you sold it.
Oh, yeah. Now, I remember the first house I bought in my first marriage, which didn't last very long. I bought a house, and it was a FHA repo. I bought it for $13,000. Think about it, $13,000. That's many years ago. That was in the 70s. But just think how much our money has dropped in value. I mean, now to buy that same house, you'd probably be talking close to $300,000.
Oh, easily. I'm sure. I'm absolutely sure. And that's in a fairly stable real estate environment. You get involved with something like California. I mean, we went through one crash out there in the 90s where we took a haircut, and I still wince when I think about that. And then when the bubble hit right before the crash in 2008, Gary, people went crazy out there. And we told our friends, some of our neighbors and stuff who were, everybody's figuring they're going to get rich. A few people sold their homes, then moved like to where you are, where the bubble wasn't started yet. So they did pretty well. But the carnage, we had a neighbor, a young couple, and they were packing one day. I mean, they're right next door to us. And I went over and I said, oh, you guys are leaving. You moving up north? You going to Oregon or something? He says, oh, no, we were able to use the equity in this house and buy a place, on a hill down the street with a swimming pool and all that stuff. And I just looked at him and I thought, oh, you fool. You took all that equity and that new place that's in the midst of a bubble sucked every dime of it up. And Gary, less than a year later, it crashed. And the house became worth half the value. And they lost it.
Well,
young family with kids,
Well,
Terrible.
I did a dumb thing. I was involved in a business that was around since the 30s. And the owner came up to me and he goes, hey, I need to borrow a certain amount of money. I'll pay you back within 90 days. Well, he was talking a large amount of money. And I said, okay, but I didn't have access at that point in my life to a large sum of money. So, this is right just before the bubble, okay? So I knew my house was worth, at that time, well over $450,000. So I took out a short-term loan, and I went from house payments of $900 to $4,500 a month. And I wasn't worried about it because, you know what? I figured, hey, all this equity, no big deal, right? I got caught in the big bubble bursting. And I tell you, it was really hard to go for a year and a half of like, how am I going to make the payments every month? $4,500 is a lot. And thank God things worked out for me where I managed to refinance it back down to a reasonable amount. But, then the house was only worth, instead of $450,000, it dropped down to $271,000. Now it's back up to close to $400,000 again because the bubble's about ready to burst again. But I tell you, you got to be careful because you can get caught with your pants down really fast.
Oh, it's just frightening how quick it can happen. The guy ever pay you back?
No, he filed bankruptcy on me.
Oh, God.
Yeah, and that.
Yeah, it's people haven't been through that. I mean, you'd go down the streets in California, and I mean, we're talking nice areas here. Some of them in gated communities, but upscale areas. And we weren't in the most expensive area, but it wasn't the cheapest either. And Gary, you'd drive down the street and go past 3 houses, and 2 of them were in foreclosure. People were having to abandon their animals because they couldn't feed them. It's hard for me to describe. That was in California in 2009.
Yeah.
It was just, it was carnage. Just carnage.
Well, people out there, you better watch out, because I got a funny feeling we're going to be seeing the same thing again here shortly.
It's right back to where it was. People are doing this all alternate financing, and all this subprime stuff, and it's just really, you're right. I mean, for once in our life, we had some brains, and, well, of course, we reached a point in our life where, we had to start thinking about these things. So we had bought in at the depth of the crash, and then we sold out as the prices came back, and then we came here to Colorado Springs, where the prices at that time were really, really reasonable. We got, 2.5 times the house for 40% of the money.
Oh yeah.
Those days are gone. But if you're living in an area where there's a bubble and you sell your property, like you're talking about your dad, if you're not prepared to move, and there's not other places that are nice to live in, where the housing's a lot cheaper, you're going to get hammered.
Oh yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Pretty simple.
Yeah, you're going to end up in something worse situation than what you started out with. Now, going back into your book, why don't you tell us a little bit about this new book?
Well, the getting some good reaction to the first one, and that's Tales from the Day. And my publisher told me anyway, that I had best get a second one in the wings, hopefully toward the end of this year. And the reason for that is that, it's kind of the same thing that you're doing. Once you build some momentum and you have a true fan base, not a false fan base, but a true base of people who've bought your book, and so far the reviews have all been good, which is gratifying. Then you come out with your second book, and it's like you building up your network. All that work that you put in to build that network, once it becomes popular and people start to, then you can go to another station affiliate or however you're building your network and say, okay, I've got, so much audience now on 35 outlets. Same thing with a book. So if you get one out there and it gets some traction, then the second one, relatively speaking, is easier to promote. And the advice always is that if you can, you want to have your second book follow in the footsteps of the first. So to answer your question, the second book is going to be another compiling of the world of weirdness and wonder that we've gone through over the past few years. But I feel so strongly about it, Gary. You've asked me about it before, that I really feel strongly about it, that if you're going to write up a story, I mean, like the ones we've talked about, where the captain of the Salvation Army decides that taking a bar is his religion working in a mysterious way, or a loan shark taking a commercial and playing it at parties. That's, if you don't have something like that has some resonance, that people can listen to next year or in the next 2 years or 5 years and get a laugh out of, or some kind of feeling out of, then you really haven't got something that's going to have traction now or in the future. There was one post I saw from this guy. It was kind of heartrending. He'd been in the Merchant Marine, and so he was probably in his 80s, and he'd written a book about his experiences, part of which I read, and Lord help me, Gary, it was terrible. I mean, he related his experiences, which were, a lot of them hair-raising, but he did it in such a way that, it had no resonance, and he couldn't get anybody to publish it. And in the end, he wrote this post, and I don't know what happened to the guy, and it was anguished. And what he was saying was basically, nobody will publish me, and when I die, this is all going to go away. All these people I knew, all these experiences, all this, it'll just vanish. And he was right. And I think that's why a lot of people feel pushed or feel moved to write a book. As you get older, you want your life to have some resonance, to have some traction, to mean something, you know? And not all of us are Bill Gates or even Zuckerberg, and so people write these books, most of them full of reminiscences about apple peelers and leaving your bike on the lawn that didn't get stolen, that just have no resonance with anybody anymore.
Well, you're so right. If you go back and listen to like Art Bell, for example, go back into the 90s, all the 90s, all the way up to when he retired the last time. You know what? You can go back 20 years and listen to 20-year-old shows, and you know what? They're just as exciting and mean something as anything you hear now. Now, here's the thing. I'm going to get people mad. I'm going to get a whole bunch of emails again. And I know one of my friends who does a weekend show was on one of the chats. I'm not going to say warm, fuzzy orbs. Okay, James, don't worry about that. But what I'm going to say is nowadays, because of the internet, okay, people can go out and buy a microphone at Walmart, plug it in their USB port, go on Facebook and do Facebook Live and call themselves a TV show or radio show, or they go do a podcast or they do a live show. They don't even know how to do it. They don't, and they make a mockery of what they're trying to do. At least I listen to, like conspiracy talk radio shows, and you got guests on, or the host on there don't even know what they're talking about. They can't even interview a guest. They can't make it exciting. And then they get frustrated because they wonder, why don't I have anybody listening? Well, it takes a long time. I've been doing this since 1976, off and on, folks. I have a lot of hours behind a microphone. And I tell you, it's hard work. The same way as like Wayne, when he sits there and writes his novel, he has to think of a story. He has to figure out how to put it all together to flow, to make it interesting. It's the same thing. My show, your book.
Yep. It's very, very similar. And, before I started writing the book, I'm going to date myself now, I reread some stuff by Gene Shepard. He's the one who created A Christmas Story, which now the movie's a classic. And, he wrote about his life in the 50s, but the way he wrote about it, it's funny. You don't have to have lived then in a little town in Ohio to laugh at it. And I reread a bunch of the columns written by Will Rogers originally. And that stuff still has traction today. It's still funny today. And that's, to me, true artistry, if you can do that.
Okay, we're down to the last 3 minutes. I need you, again, tell everybody, Wayne, where they can find your book, the name of the book again, and, how they can support you by buying the book. Give them all that information and your website.
Thank you very much. The book is Tales from the Day, and it's available. All you need to do is go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble. On Amazon, you'll see an audio version as well. And it's hardback, it's electronic, any way you want to buy it, it's available. And my website is www.talesfromtheday.com. Those are words all lowercase, all together, no spaces. Talesfromtheday.com. And I would love for any of your audience to buy the book in any format, and I would be absolutely delighted. And Gary, I've really appreciated being on your show.
Well, I'm glad to have you on. We've got to get you back on here maybe next month or so, and we can just talk about life experiences. Why not?
Why not?
Why not?
Let me know. I would love to do it. I really enjoy this. So I appreciate it very much, and I'm sure your audience is growing by leaps and bounds as well. Oh, yeah.
Well, sir, again, like always, I enjoyed having you on Night Dreams Talk Radio. And
thank you.
Tell your friends about us.
Oh, I have been doing that. Okay, you take care, and just let me know when you got a slot open down